Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the first book of Samuel, Shmuel Aleph, and we will finish chapter 14, Perek Yudalid, today, as we read the last part of the battle between Shaul and his forces against the Philistines, against the Plishtim, which, as we learned in the last few chapters, that it was Shaul's son Jonathan, that his tactics, his bravery, and his action, as opposed to his father's inaction, that brought about this tremendous victory. And we learned about how Jonathan, how he disobeyed the oath that Shaul had made, telling everyone not to eat, and how Jonathan was upset with that oath, and as we read last time, that he disobeyed it, not having known that such an oath was even made. He was too busy fighting the war, and how upset he was at Shaul, at his father, for making that oath, because by asking the people to fast, it made it harder for them to fight, and as we saw, that error led to the people being really hungry and eating inappropriately, eating the animal meat with the blood, which, as we said, is something that you're once prohibited by the Torah from doing. Now, Shaul has been consistently making this mistake of looking at at God as someone whom needs to be appeased by rituals. He's constantly looking at superstitious ways to bring about God's presence and God's victory, looking at the ephod, the apron, looking at the aron, the ark, all of these lessons which Shmuel has been teaching this entire book so far, has been teaching us that is not how to bring about favor from God. The way one brings about favor from God is by doing the things that God asks one to do, by being faithful to Him, and by living the kind of life that God wants from us. And Jonathan got this message. He understood that what he needed to do, the way his faith was demonstrated in God was by acting, was by knowing that he had to save the people, knowing that the situation with the Philistines was intolerable and the people needed to be saved, and thinking, based on what the strengths that he had, how to go about bringing about this victory, while his father was busy trying to find magical ways to get God on his side. Now, we're going to see this pattern continue, and we're going to see how Shaul has many chances to learn this lesson, and thus presumably maintain his kingdom, but he continues to make this mistake and not learn the lesson. So it's his belief in the wrong type of worship of God, which is the reason why he can't be the king, but more so, it's his arrogance and inability to learn that lesson. So Vayomer Shaul, this is verse 36, Pasuk Lamed Vav. Saul now says, Nerda achrei plishtim laila, and the people have now eaten. Let us go down now at night, v'navoza vohem ad boker, and let's harass them. And navoza literally means to take plunder from them through till the morning. The Philistine camp is in total disarray. Now we can go take their things and just get rid of them. V'lo nash'er bahem ish. We won't leave anyone alive in their camp. Let's just kill the whole Philistine army. Vayomru, and the people said to Saul, Kol hatov be'einecha aseh. Whatever it is that you want, go ahead and do. Right? It's an unusual statement because you can get the sense here that people are saying to him, go ahead, you do what you want. In other words, they're already questioning Saul's leadership. They're already recognizing that his leadership is flawed. So go ahead, do it. Vayomer HaKohen, and then the priest said, and this Kohen is the one who we mentioned before was the family of Eli, the corrupt family. And this Kohen is going along with Saul's notion that he somehow, because he's the Kohen, has this magical connection to God. So therefore he says, Nikrva halom Elo Elohim. Let us come close to God here. It's time for us to consult with God. Let's do this ritual magical practice as opposed to before we go ahead and continue fighting this war. Vayishal Shaul be'Elohim. So Saul goes ahead and he asks God. Presumably, this is the Urim V'Tumim, the breastplate that is being worn on the apron of the Kohen, of the priest. Ha'ered acharei Plishtim. He asks God, shall I go down and attack the Philistines? Hasitneim biyad Yisrael. Will you put the Philistines in the hands of the people of Israel? In other words, will you continue? V'lo anahu bayomahu. And the Urim V'Tumim, the breastplate, didn't answer. There was no answer. Why? Because, again, this was not the point. Shaul is completely missing the point. What's necessary here is to think, how should I proceed in this battle? If it's the right thing to do to attack now at night, so then let's do it, right? What God wants now is action, not these kinds of questions. Vayomer Shaul, and Saul said, Goshu halom, kol pinos ha'am. Gather together all of the leaders of the nation. U'da'u uru'u. So now Saul, and if you remember, this reminds us of what happened back with Yehoshua, with Joshua and Achan, when there was when Joshua, when the people lost a battle and some soldiers were killed, and they didn't know why, and Yehoshua had made an oath that the people shouldn't touch any of the plunder from Jericho, from Jericho, and Yehoshua then said, well, why did we lose this battle that followed that event? It must be someone did something wrong. Someone must have taken from it. And then they did lots, and they discovered it was Achan. And Shaul is thinking, presumably he's thinking back to that occasion, and he's thinking, well, I made a shvuah, I made an oath. Let's see, someone must have violated that oath. And that must be the reason why. But the difference is that when thinking about the comparison, one also sees the stark differences. Number one, in Yoshua's case, something bad actually happened. They had lost a battle. Over here, the only thing bad that happened was that God didn't answer Saul. Nothing bad happened now to think that anyone did something wrong. Shaul is thinking that this is some kind of a bad sign that God's not answering him, while he really should have learned a lesson from it. He's just doubling down on his stubbornness. He should have learned a lesson from it, that this isn't what God wants right now. But instead, what Shaul thinks is that there's something wrong, and I have to find out who did something wrong. So, let's find out who is the one that sinned, why God is not answering me. Because the Lord lives, God lives, the one who has saved the people of Israel. And therefore, we have to find out who did this sin. Even if we find out that the sin was committed by Jonathan, my son, kimot yomot, he will be put to death. But the people did not like that. So Saul, there's already, one gets the sense here, first of all, who goes and says such a thing, that they would kill their son, especially the son who everyone knows is the hero of the day, which is why the people didn't say, yay, because when he says, Chai Hashem, right, long live, God lives, you'd expect the people to answer, say something, but the people did not say anything because they knew, right, what was going on. And if Saul says he would even execute his own son, the one who was the leader, the one who was the victor, this is clearly not, it's not going over well. And again, Saul is, rather than learning from his son's behavior and from his son's actions how to act properly, he's learning exactly the wrong lesson. So we continue with verse 40, Vayomer el kol Yisrael, and he said to all of the people of Israel, Atem tiyu le'ever achad, all of you stand on one side, Bani v'yonasan bani, and I and my son, I as the king and the king's son will stand on this side, Nihiyeh le'ever achad, Vayomru ha'am el Shaul, and the people said to Saul, Hatov beinach aseh, go ahead, do what you want, whatever. In other words, this king is not inspiring confidence among his people. Like all of that confidence we had in the beginning when Shaul had his first victory, and the people were all celebrating and making Saul the king and long live the king, all of that kind of went out the window when they see his behavior here in this episode. Verse 41, Vayomer Shaul el Adonai, so Shaul says to God, Elohei Yisrael, the God of Israel, Hava Tamim, bring out the Tamim, right? What does that mean? So Tamim, would here is referring to there's various ways of bring out the truth. Tamim meaning the truth. This is the way the Radak understands it, and the Targum understands it, and it could be a reference to the Tamim, the Tumim, meaning the Urim v'Tumim. But it's clearly he's putting out lots here. So Hava Tamim is bring out the truth. Is he saying to God? In other words, let's do lots and bring out the truth. Vayilached Yonatan v'Shaol v'ha'am yatzau. And the lots fell on Jonathan and Saul, on Yonatan and Shaul. It's interesting that it fell on the two of them, because Yonatan was the one who violated the oath, and Shaul was the one who made this big mistake. So they both deserve to be pointed out in a certain sense. So Vayomer Shaul, verse 42, and Shaul says, Hapilu beini uvein Yonatan bani. Now let's see if it's my fault or Yonatan's fault, my son. Vayilached Yonatan, and the lot fell out on Yonatan. So Vayomer Shaul al Yonatan, so Shaul says to Yonatan, Hegidali me'asita, tell me what it was that you did. Vayaged lo Yonatan, so Yonatan told him, Vayomer to'om to'amti b'ktsei hamateh asher biyadi ma'at dvash. I tasted a little bit with my stick, a little bit of honey. Hineni, here I am, amut, I'll die. If one gets a deep sense of sarcasm in the way Yonatan is answering. You asked me what my sin was. You want to kill me? Okay, yeah, I tasted a little bit of honey. For this you're going to kill me. But I'm ready. If that's what you think, go ahead. Take my life away. If that's how you feel, then go ahead. Vayomer Shaul, and Saul says, this is verse 44, Ko yaseh Elohim v'cho Yosef. So will God do, and so God will continue to do. Kimot tamut Yonatan, because Jonathan, you shall be put to death. Now, this is, there's not, you don't need a lot of commentary to say, and well, let's see. So the people react the same way that you and I, reading this chapter, are reacting in our own hearts. Vayomer ha'amel Shaul, and the people said to Saul, Hayonatan yamut. Should Jonathan be the one that dies? Asher asa ha'yeshua ha'gedolah hazot b'Yisrael. He's the one that brought about this entire victory, this entire deliverance that we had of the people of Israel. Chalila, far be it. Chai Adonai, we swear on the existence, on the life of God. Im yipol misarat rosh ha'arza. If even one hair on his head should fall to the ground as a punishment. Ki im Elohim asa hayom hazeh. Because it was with God that he was able to bring this about. In other words, Jonathan had it right. He's the one that brought this about. Vayivdu ha'amet Yonasan v'lo. And the nation, the people, redeemed Jonathan, and he did not die. Now, what does this mean that people redeemed him? The simple understanding, and it's the understanding of the Metzudos, is that simple understanding, and it's what I'm going to go with, is by saying these words, they redeemed Jonathan. They made Saul had to agree and understand that this is not what has to be done. You're trying to tell me that God wants Jonathan to be put to death, but we see the opposite is the case. God wants Jonathan to be the one. It was through God that Jonathan brought about this tremendous victory. So Jonathan was saved, and again we see this pattern, which we can understand the failure of King Saul. Now the issue here is so important, because as we're establishing in this book of Shmuel the beginnings of the monarchy that is going to be the monarchy that gets set up, we have to understand the contrast, and we have to understand how much we can learn from Shaul's mistakes, what the king is supposed to be. and how what is wanted from the king. And chief among them is that the king is supposed to lead the people towards God, towards the type of God that is the mission of the Jewish people to teach the world. And that is that God is one, that there aren't many gods. You can't appease gods by rituals and sacrifices, but rather what God wants is his allegiance. God wants us to be faithful to him. God wants us to do those actions which will bring about the type of world that God wants us to bring about. A king has to understand that. If a king understands that, he may have other flaws, but if he understands that basic message, then he has a place as the monarch of the people of Israel, because then he can lead them. And we're going to see this as we learn through the books of Shmuel and Melachim. We're going to understand that the kings, even the ones that are good, like David and so on, are not perfect, right? But this basic message and understanding is what is necessary. And the kings that did not follow that are the ones that we understand, their failures. So Vishaul and Saul lochad hamelucha al Yisrael. At this point, I'm sorry, this is verse 46. I skipped by mistake. So back to 46. So Saul stopped chasing the Philistines. He didn't go down and attack because he didn't get the magical sign that he wanted. Now, this seems like a bad thing. He probably should have. He should have done the action. So the remaining Philistines went back to their place, still to be there to bother them in the future. And Shaul continued to secure and establish his kingdom over the people of Israel. So Shaul continued to be the king and built a stronger kingdom. And he was able to wage war against all the enemies around B'Moav, Uvnei Ammon, Uv'Edom, Uv'Malchei Tzovo, V'Plishtim, all of the various nations around, the Moabites and the Ammonites and Edom and so on, and the Philistines, Uv'Chol Asher Yifnei Yarshia. And wherever he turned, he was successful in his battles, and he put them down. Vayas Chayil, he was able to build up a tremendous wealth, is usually what Chayil means. It could mean here army also. Vayachet Amalek, he was also able to strike the people of Amalek. And this may be a reference to what we're going to read about in the next chapter, or this may be that there were several battles against Amalek. Vayatzel et Yisrael miyad Shosei, and he was able to save the people of Israel from those that were tearing Israel apart. So he's building a kingdom. He's bringing the people together. He's defending them against their enemies, and Shaul is being successful. Vayehi b'nei Shaul, and the sons of Shaul were Yonatan v'Yishvi u'Malkishua, were three sons named Yonatan, who we learned about, and two others who we're learning about now, Yishvi and Malkishua. V'shneim shtei benotav, and he had his two daughters, Shema Bechira, the older one was Meirav, v'Shema Ketana, Michal, and the younger one was Michal, who we're going to read about later, is going to have some important roles to play. V'shem Eshet Shaul, and the wife of Saul was Achinoam bat Achimaatz, that was her name. V'shem Sartzva'o, and the head of his army, his general, was Aviner ben Ner, Dod Shaul. So it was Saul's uncle, whose name was Aviner ben Ner. V'kish Avi Shaul, v'Ner Avi Avner ben Aviel. And Kish, who was Saul's father, and Ner, who was Avner's father, Ben Aviel, were both sons of Aviel, which would make Saul then Aviner's cousin, his first cousin. Vatihi hamlacha chazaka al Plishtim, and the war against the Plishtim was very strong. And this one wonders if one of the reasons why the verse is pointing this out is because Saul left them alone because he didn't get that sign he was looking for, and they were able to go back to their place and rebuild. And had he attacked and killed them out, the Philistines wouldn't have bothered them. But now they're still around to make war and to harass Saul, Kol Yimei Shaul, all of the days of Saul's kingdom. V'ra'ah Shaul kol ish giborok v'chol ben chayil, and Saul saw everyone who was a man of strength, and strong, a person or a warrior, Vayasveu love, and he gathered him, and basically meaning to put him into his armies and his service, which harkens back to, remember, Shmuel's warning to the people that your sons will be impressed into service by the king. You just be ready for it, and that's what's happening. So this concludes chapter 14. And we're going to continue to learn of Saul's mistakes as we read through the next chapter 15. Thank you so much for studying chapter 14 together. Looking forward to continuing our study of the book of Shmuel and the kingdom of Saul, and the tremendous important lessons that we're learning from it. Thank you.